about customer resource management, CRMs for test prep and tutoring professionals. I'm Kevin Organichek. I founded the Association of Test Preparation, Admissions, and Private Tutoring, and we focus on professional development, continuing education, and training for independent educational consulting firms. I'm joined by an awesome panel, and I want to go through and just have everyone just like in alphabetical order here, just mention your name, what you do, what you founded, and or what you run, and and we'll start with Richard. So Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, Richard Dalton. I'm with Your Score Booster. So we help students excel on SAT, ACT, SSAT, ISEE, GRE, GMAT, all the admissions exams, and AP.
Got it. And you're based in Vancouver, Canada.
Based in Vancouver. Correct.
Excellent. Odette.
Hello, I am coming all the way from the south side in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am the founder of the Prep Bar, where I help students to improve their scores on the same admissions test, as well as adding a life coaching component. I am a certified academic life coach for teens, so I help our students to also improve their systems and design their life foundation at a very early age so that they can move towards success.
Nice. Candace.
Hi, I am Candace Lappin. I'm the founder of The Ladder Method. We are an executive functioning and coaching company. So we do a little bit like Odette. We do a lot of foundational work with kids as young as, our youngest is in kindergarten. Our oldest is in his 50s. So we work even with adults. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for appearing on the panel. Shahar.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shahar Link. I'm the founder of Mindspire Test Prep. We're based in Raleigh, Durham. More Durham than Raleigh, but you got to throw in Raleigh. I started it 10 years ago and had been tutoring for 10 years before that. And we kind of do a lot of the same stuff, and a lot of academic tutoring as well, but mostly SAT, ACT, IC, SSAT, MCAT, LSAT, all that. Nice to see you.
Neil?
Boy, let's see. I started with Princeton Review a long time ago. I ran Princeton Review offices, ran a company that owned a bunch of Princeton Review franchises. Then I jumped over to R&D and ran content, wrote a lot of the books, created a lot of the courses. Left, I helped to build Noodle Pros to what it is today. And along the way, either ran, consulted, or worked with a bunch of other agencies, among them A-List, Zinc, Inspirica, and a few others along the way. So I've been around.
Terrific. Great segue to A-List and Dianna.
Hi, I'm Dianna Sermon. I work for A-List Education in the UK, but I got my start about a decade ago at A-List in New York running their client services. And I was the sole person, but expanded it into the team that it is now. Came over to the UK about 4 years ago to help them run their team here and expand their offerings. We do the same testing in addition to all of the international exams. So the Bocconi exams and A-levels, IB, you name it. You guys know what you know what they are. You've been through them all, so that's kind of where we all are. So that is my background, and I'm happy to be with you guys today.
Oh, it's great to have you. So to get started, let's just take a quick yes/no poll from the audience. Yeah, Neil, I wasn't sure how to separate the questions on the poll. So. Okay, so do you currently use a CRM to help manage your business? The overwhelming majority, yes. And then there are a few people that have not. So this is still a really appropriate, I think, presentation for you all. And are you currently shopping for a CRM? I think that's like all the time anyways, even when you have one sometimes. So perfect. So I think this is going to be great content for both groups. Okay. So here's some questions that we had from members. And if it's okay, I'll just probably direct the questions to you and by name, and then give as comprehensive an answer as you want. So when is it time to consider adding a CRM? So let me start with Dianna.
Sure. I don't think it's ever too early, right? Because what happens when you start without a CRM is that you're managing multiple documents, multiple spreadsheets, and you're working across a lot of things, and depending on one person or maybe two people to keep those up to date at all times and manually follow up. CRMs are cheap, they're available, and they do a lot of things that you want them to do. And so I don't think there's an early enough time, especially if you're just getting started. Also, moving over CRMs can be a nightmare. So I think, as anybody knows, that it can be absolutely atrocious. So I think the earlier you have your data organized and your customers organized, your leads, your follow-ups, the better. It can just make things easier for you.
Great. Shahar, how about you? So I know a little bit about your business, and so I know that you actually you put a lot of thought into it when you started considering CRMs, and so at what point, how big was your business before you started considering a CRM?
I mean, I think I had a really kind of, like a spreadsheet that I built that was my CRM from day one in some way. I mean, you need something, but I mean, I think I started to look for third party or off-the-shelf solutions once I hired my first tutor, and it wasn't just the Shahar show anymore. And immediately at that point, there was a lot more balls in the air, even if it's just one other tutor. So that was pretty early. That was, 9 months after day one. And I agree with Diane, was it? That, there's really no such thing as too early. It's a constantly evolving process as well. So you're never really done either.
Gotcha. Candace, how about you?
I had one from the day one of my business. I hired 2 people in 2012, and I don't always use even all the components of it, but I think I knew I had worked in tech before I jumped into this field. And so everything in my mind was about automating everything, and not, for us, it was all about the individual appointments. We're not a location-based service. So everything is in the home or online. And this is the only way to manage it, because otherwise you're sending individual emails on a constant basis every time you onboard a client, and it doesn't work. So anything that at the beginning we could find, or I could find, that would automate that sign up process. And so everything for us is integrated. So from the point that they sign the paperwork, it funnels into the CRM, into something else, into, that's sort of how we've done it. But I couldn't imagine running this. It would be so cumbersome. And I think it just slows you down. So yeah, from pretty early on.
That's great. Richard, how about you?
It was when I got an office assistant and our first tutor, we went with a CRM, and it was really the office assistant recommended back then, a CRM. And we were doing some stuff on spreadsheets, but then switched to a CRM. I agree with, it's never too early.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, that's definitely my take as well. Neil, how about you? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, look, these days there are plenty of them out there. Most of them do what you need them to do, although it's as often a pain point and a frustration as it is the backbone of the business. Just in the interest of kind of rounding out the conversation and pushing back a little bit, when you get to an off-the-shelf model, there is inherent logic to that model. They tend to be very hierarchical, and there is always a danger that your business comes to resemble the CRM rather than having a CRM that does what you want it to do for your business. And I think that that's a real just a tension point and something to be cognizant of as the business grows and builds out into the CRM and starts adding on other pieces and integrating other software, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you have like a specific example to cite on that?
Well, sure. I mean, there was, there's always this initial conversation or decision of, do we build something custom or do we go off the shelf, right? So if you go custom, there's a lot there. It's sort of, you're starting down a road of having a tech team that is perpetual, right? It never ends. There is always, like, you're always going to need more work and more add-ons. If you go off the shelf, then you do have to adapt to those off-the-shelf tools. And I think probably the poster child of invasive off-the-shelf logic is probably Salesforce, right? Like, it is as deep as it gets, but it is very rigid. And you have to use their vocabulary. You got to use their dichotomies in order to make that system work. And then there's probably some other ones in the middle there. But that, to me, I think that's emblematic of the tension.
Yeah, good points. Odette, moving on to the second bullet point here. So I know your background is you were at Kaplan for a time, and you were in sales and service, not only tutoring, in addition to the tutoring. So what do you think the key functions are when you're shopping for a CRM? Like, what does it need to do? And feel free to drop names on CRMs that you've tried if you'd like.
Sure. I guess first I want to speak to what Neil just brought up, which is an excellent point, because I was late to the CRM game personally. I think I have tech phobia. So I initially was doing the juggling all of the pieces, and it was working just fine for me because I wasn't really sure what I wanted in a CRM. So definitely for me, I enjoy having the entirety of I think what I like most is being able to shut it off at times, because there are some times that I just need to individually reconsider my business. So of course, the key functions of keeping your leads in order, keeping your follow-ups in order, that's critical, because we all know that we're in business to ultimately serve our clients, which we can only do once there's a sale. To ensure we have the sale, we must follow up. So those are the key things for me. With regard to creating follow-up emails and generating content and things of that nature, that's kind of where I tend to spread my wings a little bit more. I'm not a fan of cookie cutter. Once we get past the onboarding and the welcomes and so forth, I like to be a little bit more individual in terms of my client base. So the key functions for me is always going to be lead, follow-up, organization, payment structures, and things of that nature. The actual individualized communication piece, I like to kind of keep my finger a little bit more on the pulse. So you will very often just see like a Gmail email from me about your kid. so that's my take.
Gotcha. Other thoughts about key functions to anyone on the panel?
It's such a rabbit hole, right? Like if you go down let's talk about just the product, tutor, students. Do you have fields in order to track score reports or to track scores? Can you store a score report? If you're scoring multiple scores and practice tests, do they talk to each other? So can you look at progress of scores? And then can you go a level deeper and look at mastery of certain topics? And now suddenly it's not a CRM, but it's an LCMS. It's got content functions. Then we go to tutors, and suddenly we've got payroll and HR functions, and you're attaching a billable hour to a paid hour. And now you've got something running payroll, and then you got the marketing function. We've got like pre-sale. Do you have iterations for people in your system who aren't yet students? And does it talk to your website? Like, do you want to host an event and sign people up who don't already exist in your system, et cetera? Like, you know, and then suddenly we're talking about HubSpot, and then we're talking about, you know, hosting events like this one. Does it tie into these things? It's, you know, like this is eventually we're talking about every aspect of your business, right?
Yeah, I think Neil has it exactly right. You know, when I was thinking about coming on the panel, the one thing that I think about CRMs, and I don't know why this reference comes up, but there's that scene in Apollo 13 where, you know, they have to literally fit something round into a square hole, and they just dump a bunch of stuff on the table and they're like, figure it out. And I think for all tutoring companies, they end up in the same place where our business model doesn't fit exactly into a CRM because of all the things that Neil mentioned: score reports, student progress, mastery, and the interaction between the family and the student. So we all, I think thousands of us, end up in this place where nothing quite fits, and we end up doing a lot of manual work anyway to have those touch points with the families to make sure that we can manage relationships in more than just what would normally be a business-to-business relationship, which is the majority of what these CRMs are built to do. And I don't know about you guys. I've found a way to put the square peg and the round hole together, but I have not ever met a perfect system that does all the things that Neil just talked about, which I wish I had.
That seems.
I would just add in there. I mean, it was that kind of thing is why we decided to go custom after about 5 years of trying 2 or 3 CRMs. We were switching, you know, every 18 months, trying a new CRM until it was just like, this is, I mean, there's the expense of buying the third-party CRM, and then there's just the expense of trying a new system every 18 months until you go crazy. So, and I don't regret the going custom in the end. It was just too, especially when it came to like mock tests and scheduling them and then getting the scores in. That was the deciding point. It's like we could not find anything that really did that how we wanted it to do, and it was just, it's such an essential component of a test prep company's business is practice tests and keeping track of them. So
Shahar, so tell us like what functions, like in the order of functions that you added to your custom system, like what did you start out with? Did you start out with like tutor scheduling, like a calendar function, or like?
Yeah, I mean, you have to, like, that stuff a lot of CRMs already do, but you still have to have them if you're doing it custom. So yeah, we started building the tutor scheduling system and the, you know, separate sort of parent roles and student roles, and tutor roles and admin roles, and making sure that those were all clear. And then getting the schedule, and then, you know, the custom thing was really nice because you can start to say, well, what do we want tutors to enter after every session? And you start to really think about what do we want to track here, and what do we want, you know, charts on, and all of that. And it was so liberating. And then the next thing right after that was integrating, getting a mock test calendar that we can put on our website, and kids could schedule, or tutors can go in and schedule a kid, and then all of the score information is associated with each mock test state, and then there's reports on that, on tracking progress. That was sort of the big thing that no CRM had been able to do for us yet.
But then you still need like a marketing component, right? Like it would be ideal to be able to email or set up email automations. And
yeah, so I mean,
the part that I found didn't exist when I was looking at CRMs back in my operating days. So
yeah, this is what Neil's getting at, is it's a rabbit hole, and it's expensive to, you know, we use ActiveCampaign for email automation, really. I mean, we have some basic emails. Congratulations, you've signed up for your mock test, or congratulations, you got a 1500 on your test. You know, so these basic ones, but we couldn't do what ActiveCampaign does with our custom system. So we have that too, you know, and then there's other stuff we bought too, because it just, it's, you know, you have to decide how, you can't reproduce what, you know, a tech company does in some ways, in some important ways.
Sure.
And to that, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay, to that, and Shahar, what I would like to add as well is that the point of like divergence, I guess is the best way to say it, because there is the key marketing function as well. And so for my focus with the marketing piece, it's always about staying in front of your potential clients and not just the inside marketing part, which is communicating with the families and so forth. Because my organization is a more boutique, smaller fit, I don't have as much with the tutor scheduling and all of that. I can manage the other pieces myself, but definitely for me, that the outreach part is critical in terms of just saying, this is what I do, this is where I am, this is how we do what we do, and these are our core values as a company, which is hard to do if you're only considered with, or if your only consideration is, I guess, using the CRM for organizing people that have already found you. So that's, I want to add that to the piece as well.
Thank you.
There's another aspect here, aside from the business itself, and I think most of the folks on the call here are running their businesses. There's the reporting function, and I think that's where a lot of the customization and the need for flexibility comes in. So, like, if you want a report of all the kids who took a second test whose score didn't improve, or if you want to know what the conversion rate was for class of 2012, rising, or 2022 rising juniors, or you want to know how much did you spend on Google AdWords last month and did those folks convert? There are all of these things that we want as business owners, because we want that information. It's going to make our lives a lot easier. But every time you add those things, you're adding expense, you're adding effort. There's layers of requirement in terms of where that info comes from and how it gets into your system. And it may make your life easier as the manager, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to sign up a single additional student or help another student get a single additional point, right? So that's another one of these kind of like trade-offs. And then there's the expense of having a system that is robust enough to create a giant suite of custom reports like that. Throw that out there as either a pain point or a benefit.
So we, when I was at Chiton, we had like self-made CRM, like Shahar had mentioned, and we had the ability to add like analytical tools. It's called bolting on, and we bolt on things. But what would happen is, like, if we bolted on something to like give us, I don't know, a revenue by product report, something else would go wrong on the platform somewhere. Like, we would just create a ripple effect whenever we wanted to add something to it. So I don't know if there are a lot of people that are trying to build their own thing right now, but that was certainly something that was difficult for us. So.
Yeah, and I think Neil's point about reporting is huge. And, personally, I found that, when you want robust reporting, specifically when it comes to scoring, having that integrate with your CRM is immensely complex. And in fact, I've had it to where you can report out scores and different levels of mastery through your CRM, but the reports that you can generate out of your scoring system, whatever you happen to be using, tend to be more robust, more detailed, more complex, and having them separate for me at this point and generally has been preferable, because I've never been able to get it to talk to a CRM in a way that I think a parent would find accessible or just useful. It just never reported out in the way that I thought was I don't want to say pretty, but at least like it's something that a parent can look at and say, I understand this, more than they can understand a score report that says all of the important things.
It begs the question of, do you want a CRM or just like a couple of really good interns?
Right. Exactly.
Which one's going to get you there faster?
That's right. And I don't know what you guys are using. I guess we haven't really talked that much about it, but I'll say that initially, like many of us, we had a very robust Access database that was all manual entry. This is a decade ago. We moved on to a couple of different things. like many people, we got talked to by Salesforce who promised us the moon and back, spent a ridiculous amount of money on that, to only have it be not even close to what we had hoped. And, it does what they always do. And then it doesn't do any more than that. And then we had a custom built solution right before I left New York, which I actually thought was probably one of the better ones that I had seen. And then coming over to the UK, I actually inherited Tutor Cruncher. So those are the systems that I have been through. What are you guys currently using?
So we use, at Your Score Booster, we use Zoho CRM for the main CRM, and we added a lot of customization there, which is quite straightforward to customize, to put in. In fact, we just created our own module for employees to track them. And Zoho One now lets you get a subscription to all of their other products. So that they have a lot of products under the Zoho One umbrella. And then what we did was for scheduling and things like that, we went with Learnspeed, which manages tutor schedules. It makes them file a report after they have a session. And it's like 29 cents per tutoring session or something like that. And I just didn't want to deal with managing. It's enough dealing with managing our marketing website. And so I figured just any other programming, just offload, right, to some expert that keeps developing it.
So you have two systems. Do they talk to each other?
Learnspeed talks to we still use QuickBooks Desktop, but Learnspeed talks to QuickBooks Desktop or to QuickBooks Online now. And then it does, it handles all the scheduling, but it does not talk to our CRM, but we don't really need it to talk to our CRM. I don't think everything does need to speak to everything else.
Okay, that's fair. Candace, what are you using?
Well, I'm using, it's so funny. So I took years ago, Learnspeed, and I wasn't familiar with all of those things because I was coming from a different industry. So I went with something that I was like a name I was familiar with. So I'm using something called Mindbody, but what we did, and it's only because I know programming, I was able to shift and adapt it to our business, to a tutoring business model, but it is not, I will tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. You've got to do a lot of adapting on that system. And even when they tell you it's appointment-based, it's really not. It's optimal if you have a center. So let's say you have a tutoring center and everybody's coming there. It's great for that because it's based on classes. It's not based on appointments, but we run an appointments model. So, but it does funnel. So we use MailChimp. We have a separate, I agree about the sales. We use HubSpot. And then everything talks to our email client. But I don't even like the salespeople. They don't need to see what's happening over. I like it separate. It all funnels in, but it's two now separate teams doing that managing. There's internal people managing the tutor and the client. And then there's the, people that are managing partnerships. That's different, but I think we don't feel like it all needs to just be in one comprehensive system for what we do. But now that we're getting into tracking progress and things like that, we got approached by this company, TeachWorks, 6 months ago. And so I felt like they have a really nice system. They're great. Learnspeed was good. We have a different way of operating because we do everything. Like I said, I'm all into automation. So all of our payments, including our ACH, everything's automated because our clients we don't pay in packages. So our clients pay, a set rate, and then they just get billed on the day of service. So what's amazing about the system we're using for our business model is that we can set all those auto payments, all those ACH payments, and I just haven't found that any of those systems are able to do that in that way. So I like it for that, but you have to be able to innovate technologically on Mindbody. So if you're not somebody that's savvy with tech, I don't think it's a great thing. Learnspeed is wonderful. They had so much, and especially if you pay in packages, I think it is very good for that. It's just so plug and play. Like if you're starting from scratch, I like them. I like TeachWorks, and I think TeachWorks is out of New York City, but it's so simple, and all the tutors can kind of manage things. It's really I think the two nicest that I have been exposed to, but I don't know everything. Maybe the other panelists can also speak to other systems.
Sure. Anyone feel free to chime in about answer the particular system.
Yeah, I'll add with those two, that's more like scheduling, right? Versus like Learnspeed and TeachWorks. Scheduling, you can track some things about leads, which is why we also do Zoho CRM to have email templates. So really they go together, like a CRM and then your scheduling, which would be TeachWorks or Learnspeed, et cetera.
I would just throw in, I use TeachWorks and Learnspeed, and we tried both of those, and they're both good. They have pros and cons to them. In the end, we did this custom thing, but the custom thing that we built doesn't really do sales tracking for that we use Pipedrive, which has where you define a sales pipeline, make contact, pricing sent, spoke to someone, mock test taken, and you can just sort of literally drag them. Okay, they're in this stage, and then they're in this stage, and then they're in this stage, and then one sale over, and then Pipedrive is done. We couldn't reproduce that. We tried to reproduce that with our custom thing and couldn't do it. So we use Pipedrive, and I think it's great software. So for those asking about ideas for stuff to look at, if the sales process, you want to get a kind of better understanding and tons of reporting, that's a good one.
I can talk a little bit about Tutor Cruncher because that's been my day in and day out for the last 4 years. When we looked for a CRM, again, we looked for all the pieces that everybody mentioned, and of course, nothing is a great fit. The reason I think Tutor Cruncher works for us in particular is that they do have well, they'll talk about it from multiple different perspectives, right? They have a student login, a parent login. You can see all of your sessions. You can schedule your sessions. You can build the integration to your website where you can book lessons directly through the available time slots that people put in. You can see calendars as a tutor. You can see a calendar as a parent, as a student. You can see them as an admin. You can also take payments either in advance or in invoicing, and you can set whatever you'd like those to be. You can't do yet, although I've been talking to them about this, preformed packages, even though we do package offerings, but you can sell them and then set them up on the back end. And that's a very, very simple thing to do that has worked really well for us. The other thing that Tutor Cruncher does that not a lot of the other platforms do is it has an integration with a teaching platform. So you can integrate with Zoom, you can integrate with multiple different things in addition to different whiteboarding platforms. So I know a lot of people like to use BitPaper, especially right now. We find it to be fantastic. So that's an integration that they allow too. So if you'll need to launch an online session, you can do that. It also has session notes that you follow up with parents. And from the parents' perspective, the accountability is great. It sends out lesson reminders, all sorts of things. And actually recently, I don't know if many of you use, I think it's pronounced Zapier because they're Zaps, but you can set up the automation between Tutor Cruncher and MailChimp, WordPress, whatever you would like to do in order to automate whatever sort of processes you're looking for. And so, the things that I find to be great are great. And they know this as much as I'm about to tell you this. The thing that is lacking from Tutor Cruncher is their reporting on data. Most of what I report out to my teams every month, conversions, number of new clients, number of new sessions, the average length of conversions, all of that sort of data I do, and I do it manually. But to me, that's worth it, given the just ability of the system to process the day-to-day needs of hundreds of sessions, thousands of sessions a year, and different types of sessions, lengths of sessions, and things like that. So that's been my experience with TC.
I'm really curious, when I was at Noodle, we acquired HighClark, and then that became a Noodle product. Is anyone here using anything app-based? And I find it striking that more things aren't app-based, given, especially if you have tutors who are out on the road and tutoring in people's living rooms and so forth. Does anyone have anything app-based?
I know that Tutor Cruncher is building their app right now, and it works pretty well on a browser, but they don't actually have an app. Aristotle's Circle, I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. They had an app that was built for tutors to report sessions. We used them for a little bit, but nothing currently.
TeachWorks does have an app, but we didn't like it because the scheduling doesn't sync with Google Calendar or other outside calendars. At least at the time that I looked for it, was looking at it. They said they didn't have it in the plans. It wasn't high priority.
Good information.
And when I was with Revolution Prep, Revolution Prep app launched, and that was more client facing, not tutor facing, but I believe they were building in a tutor facing side to the app. That was about 2 years ago, so I'm not sure.
Does anyone know of a good CRM that does have business reports, and by business reports I mean reports that can compare current year to prior year, or
the ultimate goal.
Revenue by product, revenue by product group, that sort of thing?
I think Tutor Cruncher would claim that they can do so, but I found it to be a little bit lacking. They do have pipeline features too, and a customizable pipeline. Again, reporting out of the transitions in stages is leaves a lot to be desired there, but it does exist. But yeah, nothing that I have that can do that reporting in a really robust and nice way.
For the leads and everything, of course, Zoho CRM, any of the CRMs will do that. But as far as the revenue, that's not necessarily always in your CRM. But if you can do so much if you're talking for revenue, you can do so much in QuickBooks that,
right, so the goal is to have a business dashboard, in my mind anyways.
I see.
I'd want a business dashboard that could extract data from the database, right, the CRM, and allow me to sort of slice it and analyze it the way that I wanted to. I've always found that to be lacking. Going back to the time where I was with Chiton, we added that feature, we bolted it on, and we made it possible to compare prior years, but it just wasn't as clean as, for example, the systems that Kaplan or Princeton Review had in place at the time. And I've always wondered, is there a place where is there a system where it all sort of lives together? So it sounds like Tutor Cruncher is pretty solid.
Yeah, they do all the payroll stuff too, and you can define all of the different types of sales codes and things that you have. So pulling it out and reporting it out and doing the pay things, that all talks really well with whatever you're using pay system wise. I think that's really good, and it does have a pretty robust dashboard now. I think it's highly dependent on you setting up your jobs the way that you need to in order for it to report like revenues and things like that. We also use it to track all of our internal, office hours and things. You give tutors a certain amount of time for prep and whatever. And Tutor Cruncher has a little bit of a hard time distinguishing between tutoring hours and those reported for what I would consider indirect work, prep time and things like that. So I always kind of double check what it has, but it does have really robust reporting features, a dashboard. You can do year-to-year comparisons. Can you report those out and look at them in a more detailed way? I'm working on that for them because I want that desperately.
But to Kevin's point about the reporting, it's hard to find the reports. Like, everyone wants the reports the way they want them. They tend to be very individualized. So there's having good reports and having the data there, but then the next level up is getting it in something that looks like real time. And that I don't think I've seen, frankly. Like, do I know day in and day out where my travel costs are, what's the spend on tutors doing non-tutoring hours for prep time, or, any of the other things that it would be good to know daily and not monthly or quarterly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's an excellent point, yeah.
I think the problem with having it all in one thing is one thing is never as good. That's the problem, right? If you're trying to put it all in one thing, I find you have different products specialize in different things. I mean, it is possible. Zoho does do invoicing, and there's also Zoho Books, but it's just not as good as doing things separately.
I think that's the reason why the Zapier system is so prevalent, is because of the fact that people need to integrate these multiple systems. So I know that a newer person who may not have had or be in business for a decade is coming to this like straight off of the decision. And so maybe for them, we could kind of talk about what works for a smaller organization. In terms of what you can do to, zap some things together. Like Dianna was talking about Tutor Cruncher, which is hugely robust, and maybe like more than someone who has 4 tutors needs. So I would like to ask, in your searching, what else did you find that might speak to someone here that might not have 12 or 15 or 45 tutors and hundreds of hours?
I know that Acuity works, and it works with Zapier, or Zapier. And yeah, it allows you to do basic scheduling. It's relatively inexpensive. It's like, I don't know, maybe $20 a month for a lot of functionality. And I feel like that was one of the early on ones that I tried and used. And I know people have built their own CRM platform based on just Google stuff, like using Google Business and Google Forms. And those are really low cost, and they seem pretty effective, but they're unique and require time to build. Anyone else?
You know what? One of the things we were looking at, because 2 years ago, I actually hired somebody to help me just with this. We were thinking about migrating everything. And we really liked this other company called My School Books, but I think they changed their name to like Tutor Bird. I can find it and I'll throw it into the chat. I'll look in my email. But I really felt like for a small company with maybe 5 to 10 staff members, that it was nice because it can also integrate as a widget onto an already, so if you have an existing website that you built on Squarespace or WordPress, or, and you're just starting, things like that where you can just plug a widget in is going to be really cost effective, and it's going to help you run a lean business. The issue that like when we looked at Tutor Cruncher, when you're a small business, giving 1% of your business, you have to really think about whether that's the kind of costs that you want to give away. You really want to be mindful, because all those costs then can go into R&D on something else. So you want to find things where, and it's hard because sometimes when people come to us, they'll say, hey, move over to this. And my first question is always, I'll do it if you can negotiate a really good credit card rate, because when we started with the company that we're with, we were able to negotiate like no charge, a $10 charge on all ACH transactions, which is unheard of. And we were able to negotiate, like we can pass everything through on that. You can't do that with Stripe. And until you hit, they won't negotiate with you. And just to be mindful of this, they will not negotiate individual rates. Stripe won't until you hit $150,000 a month. So it's just something that when you're a small company and you're getting started, you want to make sure that you're looking at how to cut those costs so that you can be lean. And for us, it was always about making sure that we got quality tutors. We might have to pay them a little bit more, but like it was going to be better for us on the retention of the client and things like that. So we were trying to cut costs in other ways. But I like Tutor Bird because I felt like you could, they have really low ACH and they had really low, and I think they have automated payments. So I thought that it sounded like an interesting program. We just didn't move over.
This isn't a platform issue as much, but to Candace's point, and I find this comes up a lot, is we've got these carrying costs, whether it's credit card charges or platform fees, and you got to work really hard to make those costs visible to tutors who are doing the math in their head, and they're saying, all right, you're billing me out for $200, you're paying me $50, you're keeping $150. What's up with that? And it's like, no, I'm not keeping $150. I'm actually paying for a whole bunch of other things here that you're just not seeing, unless I find a way to make that visible and present for them. There's a management issue there.
That's correct, Neil. They really think that, you got to make it visible. We pay a lot. And this is another thing. And, because we go into homes, we have workman's comp, we have all these things that we're paying for. So and we're in California, so it's just a totally different kind of state when it comes to how you bill out your tutors, because they're employees, because we don't even get into the Uber, like there's an exception for them, but that's another management. That's for another webinar.
Yeah, you're taking us down a different road there.
Sorry. That's another webinar. But it goes to costs, right? It goes to these costs, and why when you're evaluating a CRM, you have to be mindful of all of it. It's not one thing, right? So like Tutor Cruncher, 1% of that was the thing that for us was like a pause moment when we were evaluating them. I was like, ooh, 1%. Ooh, no. We're already paying X number of dollars in credit card fees.
We've been with them for quite a while, and they were very hungry for business when we first started with them. So I think we got in way before they implemented that, and they've tried to change a few things for us, but we haven't let them do that.
Right.
Exactly. They want our business, so.
If anyone is comfortable sharing, ballpark what you pay for your CRM each month, please do. Go around the horn. And you don't have to answer, but Dianna?
It's been a while since that used to be my domain. So it was very low actually. And then recently we sat down with the guys at Tutor Cruncher and they were like, listen, it's been 5 years and we haven't changed this and we really need to. But at the time it was only, I think, a few £100 per month. And that really was
unlimited, an unlimited number of tutoring sessions. Or...
Exactly. Unlimited number of tutoring sessions. We weren't limited by anything. It was all, and they also integrated with Stripe. And I believe, I think this is still true, and I would count this as a kind of a fault of TC, is that they have a singular platform that they use for all of their companies. So if you want customization, it's something they have to roll out to everyone. It's not an individual instance like Canvas or something. So that is, I think, a huge downfall, because sometimes they implement a change and you're like, I don't need that or want that. But it does mean that they have the power of numbers to negotiate with somebody like Stripe, where they say, as a platform, as a total, we do X amount of business, so they can reduce the Stripe costs to everyone, not just for you, which is nice because I'm not doing 150,000 transactions per month, but they certainly are as a whole. So it's like, you know, they're good and bad, but I'm not sure exactly what it is now. I think it's still around that figure.
Okay, anyone else?
For Zoho One, we pay 60 US a month. So Zoho One, it's by the we only pay for each full-time employee. So all our tutors are part-time. They let us do that. With Zoho One, you're supposed to pay per employee. And Zoho CRM, you can just do separately, like however many licenses you want. But with Zoho One, because you get an umbrella that includes Zoho Recruit, we can blast out an ad through Zoho Recruit to ZipRecruiter. It's sort of like that, and it includes all those other things. So they require you to get it per employee, but it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Does it give you the ability to have parents log in or students log in to view their payments, their sessions, things like that? Is that possible through Zoho?
That would have to be customized. So yeah, we don't really get a lot of demand for that. We just tell them we sell packages, so it's different.
We do packages too, but our families like to go in, view lesson notes, download different score reports and things like that. So they like to go in and view the different aspects of like what their students are doing. Not all of them. Most of them get automated emails anyway, giving that information. You have this many sessions remaining. You have whatever left. You need to top up your account, that sort of thing. But yeah, they still like the ability to log in. So I'm wondering, if you have a client-facing platform that allows people to log in and view, it would be interesting to know what that pricing is.
Yeah, no, not for the parents, no.
Keeping with the management theme for a second, I'm wondering that for everyone here who has a platform that they like, if we asked either your tutors or your admins who are interacting with it probably more robustly than you are, would they have a different opinion? Is there a discrepancy there between the things that you like and or that some of the other end users may or may not like?
Let me just speak to the cost thing from the custom perspective. It might be interesting, and then Neil, I'll tell you my perspective on that. But we use Knack. I put this in the chat. Knack is it's kind of an off-the-shelf database builder that is extremely robust, that you don't really need programming skills. So I built the first one myself with my database skills from yesteryear, and couldn't get very far. And then we hired someone first in Canada, and now we have this sort of backup team based in Colombia, and they're great. We pay $100 a month, and we've had to go up. It started at like 50, but the more data you use, I think our $100 a month will be good for a long time, unless we, get an IPO or something. But it probably cost us somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 to build the whole thing out over the course of about 2.5 years. So just throwing that number out there, it's not cheap to build it, but it was worth it. Yeah, I don't know. I think our tutors and, everyone gets their own login, and that's cool. And the nice thing again about custom is like, oh, you want it to do that? Sure, it'll take a week and we'll build it, and it's not a big deal. So there's that.
I would say customization cost-wise, that's really not bad when you've talked to a lot of different people who've proposed like custom solutions. That's actually an initial investment. It's really not bad at all.
It's not bad, and I think a lot of it is because it's Knack, which you don't need to hire programmers per se. It's a more widely available skill. You need to be able to build an object-oriented database,
Yeah.
which is a lot easier than C++ or JavaScript or whatever you're doing. So it's cheaper.
Yeah, that's a really great resource. That's interesting, especially, you know, given the twists and turns that we have to fit our various business models into, that it's nice to have something that I would say is relatively inexpensive in the grand scheme of custom built solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a custom solution in Spirica that we built on something called FileMaker, but inevitably, for literally 5 years running, we had a guy at $100 an hour who came in once or twice a week and put a few hours in to upgrade it, fix this, run some reports, go back, change someone's billing, like, you know, all of this stuff that we needed a developer to do because the tool didn't either like build the tool so the admin can do it, or hire a developer to go in and fix something in the database. And that, you know, a couple $100 a week went on for years, even after the system was built.
I'm wondering, you know, one of the things that I think is so difficult is just data cleanliness, right? Making sure that you're closing all of your old clients and everybody's active records are good, their balances are right. You know, the CRMs like Zoho, like Salesforce, they're highly dependent on, you know, manual triggers for where people are in the pipeline. And I'm wondering if anybody else has a CRM that, or anything that pipeline management for tutoring is dependent on when a first session happens after first contact, because I think that to me is way less dependent on somebody saying, oh, right, I have to move this person in the pipeline because they had their first session. And so the data to me, that's why I end up pulling it out, because if somebody moves someone in a pipeline, that's great. If they had their first session 4 days before they remembered to move them along in the pipeline, then it's not accurate for me. So I'm wondering, do you guys have anything that's better than manually moving somebody through a pipeline, or are you doing that manually?
Does HubSpot or Zoho give you the ability to move them through the pipeline in that way, or is it only the ability to tag them as a marketing lead to move them through the pipe?
It would be possible to have customized flows. They have a thing called Zoho Flow. Yeah. So it would be possible. So when you, yeah, but that would, again, you'd need a programmer to go in and do it initially, and then it could be automated.
We did that manually at Noodle Pros until one day I saw the HubSpot task list for my office manager, and she had her like daily task list in HubSpot was several hundred strong that she would just work her way through, and that was her manual workaround to remind her to do you know, umpteen things that weren't automated, and finally, like I had to hire another person for that role because the role was now too big for one person, or I had to put the money in developers to start building the tools to automate that. And you know, it's like, at what point is the cost too great to do it manually?
Right.
Yeah, that's a key thing. Yeah, I think one of the things that, since many people here listening are sort of have smaller companies, I imagine, just looking into getting this done, I guess the key thing is to figure out what are your processes. So then when you decide to go to a CRM, you can have your processes match what you can make your CRM do that, as opposed to just getting into a CRM without having all your processes sort of laid out.
That's a great idea. Do you have anything like that you used, template to sort of a mind map that you use to help sort of sequence the tasks that you needed your CRM to do, Richard?
We didn't do that. We went right to the CRM. So if I were to go back, I would say, yeah, that's a pretty key thing to do, right?
Yeah.
I saw a lot of folks in the chat who talked about it, and Shahar, you were talking about this as well, switching CRMs, and we haven't even really touched on what that process looks like to disentangle yourself from the old one and flip over to the new one while you're in the middle of running your business. Does anyone have any either nightmare stories on that or advice on smart ways to do that?
I think, I think I've gone through 7 different CRM changeovers. And each one, everyone is, the CRM will promise you, all you have to do is fill out this spreadsheet. We'll get everybody in the right place and all your billing and all your transactions and all your stuff. And it never goes that way. I would say if they tell you 3 months, give yourself 6 months to get into a new CRM and take the first 3 months to organize your data and make sure that the workflow is right. I got a lot of flack when we switched over to one CRM saying exactly that. The timeline is longer than you think. And even if you want it to be 3 months, it's 6. And even if you want it to be 6, it's probably 7 before you turn on all the automated features, because you want to make sure the billing and the transactions and all those things are right. So my advice is organize your data first, check your workflows, check them again, make sure everything is right before you flip the system on, and then go into it. It's going to take longer than you expect, and just be prepared for it.
And they're going to tell you it's your fault because your data.
That's right.
They imported all the data. It's not our fault.
Put it in the column right. You changed the header of this column. It's like, no, I didn't.
A quick
That is
aside,
really what
for
happens. It never goes 100% smoothly. There's always small glitches along the way. So yeah, I think that, organizing it in advance and then checking it again, it makes all the sense in the world.
And so I wanted to just, as a quick aside with regard to the workflow piece, creating your own mind map, as you said, Kevin, I would just put yourself in all of the spaces that you occupy, that you want, or that your clients occupy, that you want covered by the CRM, from where do they find you, where do you find them, all the way through once they find you, what are the steps, all the way through once they found you, how do they pay you, when do you communicate, like all of that, and just box it all out, and create the workflow from there, and then see which pieces you're willing to take a hands-off approach, which things you absolutely have to feel involved in for right now, and then just start to build that piece out, because finding the ideal, if you're a smaller person, is not going to involve as much on the customization front. So you want to see where you can build in the pieces that will integrate or play nice with each other, and all of that. So I believe that that's the piece, speaking from the smaller business owner, that's going to really walk you back and then walk you into success when you're selecting which one is going to work for your business and for your clients and employees.
I would say too, that's such a great point. And I would say too, go through all those things forwards and then find out what happens if you need to take them backwards in the system. So if you've pushed a button, how can you unpush that button if something transaction-wise messes up? Because in a lot of these systems, the answer is you can't. And so you need to have a contingency for what happens when you automatically apply a payment accidentally and you need to remove that payment, something like that. So build it up forward, like Odette said, and then run it through backwards and make sure you know how you unwind things if you ever need to, because that creates some of the biggest problems I'd find. And I guess if I had to make a kind of a last point is that, whatever you're trying to do to automate your workflows and automate your business processes, I find has to come secondary to the relationship that you're building with the family. And I think we all know that if you're not building a good relationship and they're not happy with the work that you've done, it doesn't matter that you've tracked that they converted. And so, if you're getting bogged down in your workflows and your CRM, then take a step back and say, the core of my business is making sure that I'm delivering, and I'm making sure my teachers are great, my clients are happy, and that they're achieving what they need to achieve. And if you're not doing that, wait to scale up until you have the right product.
Amen to that.
I want to open it up to the group, and I know we're running over, so if you have to drop, that's fine. But I want to open it up to the attendees to see if there are any questions. I think we've answered most of what's in the chat just through the conversation, but any other questions for any of the panel members? Okay, I'm guessing we did an excellent job. Any last thoughts? So Dianna, I think you gave recommendations. So let's just go around the horn with the panelists, like one piece of advice for someone considering adding or changing their CRM. Richard.
For adding, I would say don't expect it to do everything. And I do like Zoho, although I get frustrated with their support.
Fair enough. Neil.
Making your life easier as a manager, with a smoother, better system or better reports doesn't necessarily mean that clients are happier, tutors are happier, or scores are going up. So I like take a hard look at what it's doing for your business versus just solving your own personal frustrations as you try to run the business.
Odette, I know you already sort of commented, but please.
I think I'm going to follow along with Neil because ultimately we're in the business of helping mainly young people. I know, Candace, you work with all ages, but the important part is to help these young folks be able to adapt and build in their lives and their foundation. At the end of the day, doing that in the most seamless way, then everything else tends to fall secondary. At least that's how I currently feel, again, with the caveat that I am a smaller, more boutique system, so I'm not dealing with as many clients as many of you all or employees. But I'm always going to say that the end goal is to keep the families happy and to produce in the lives of people the things that we claim that we can.
That's great. Candace?
I feel like everyone has really covered it, but it just has to work. You do have to just always gut check, is it going to make your life harder or is this going to make your life easier? And that's always the thing we're asking internally. So, because the customer doesn't, if they're having a great experience with you, sometimes all the bells and whistles, they don't need when you're early stage, but and it's something where you can grow into it.
Maybe one day when we're all sick of doing the same thing separately, we'll come together and decide it's better to do them together. How many of us have tagged exams?
Right.
So many tags.
It's also worth noting how often these things start to take on their own momentum and a life of their own. So you start down this road, and then before you know it, you've got 200 hours into the project, and like you're past the point of no return. You can't pull the plug anymore because you've now invested so much time and effort into getting it on that road, even if it's not serving your needs exactly. And that becomes a really hard point.
This is great information and super helpful. And I don't know that if we've gotten any closer to the perfect CRM. It feels like it just may not be out there right now. But it sounds like there are some good alternatives that are more robust now than they have been in the past. And